Hey guys, it's Marina with Artworthy Life, where I teach Christ-centered art journaling that gets you into God's Word every day. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another art demo from start to finish. We'll be doing some art journaling, and hopefully you will be able to jump on and continue with us and follow along. If you didn't see the supply list already, it's just some real basic supplies today. Your art journal, some watercolors, whatever paintbrushes you have, water brushes, and I have a mechanical pencil, a ruler, and the only bonus thing I have is my Tim Holtz Distress inks. So if you didn't see that supply list, it's the last post I just made, so go ahead and check that out and gather your supplies, and I hope you can join us. If you are watching, please let me know where you're watching from, and I will tell you where I'm broadcasting from. I am in Oak Harbor, Washington, visiting my grandpa for his birthday, and also get to see my grandma and my two aunts on my dad's side, which has been really fun. So I have a different background. We are in our little hotel, and we're in this really cute little hotel called the Old Harbor. Is it called Old Harbor? Something like that. Anyway, it's spelled AULD. Old Holland Inn is what it's called. So it's this Dutch themed place. Hi, Pam. Good morning. It's Dutch themed, and so I thought, why not use that as inspiration for my art journaling today? So I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and you guys can just follow along, but I brought along my art journal that I made, my DIY art journal, and so I'm just gonna do some freehanding today, and I thought I'd show you what I had in mind. Good morning, Leslie Ann. I'm so glad to see you. Can you guys tell me how the quality is, if you guys are able to hear me and if the picture is clear and all of that? I'm in a different location, like I said, so everything is a little bit harder to tell if it's coming through clear. So tell me if it sounds clear, if it's all looking good. And what I'm going to do first is sketch out my idea for the page. And so we have this cute little building, and if you didn't see my Facebook stories, it's really, really good. It's like an old Tudor style Dutch inn. It's very cute. And so I did a little like preliminary sketch here of kind of what I wanted to draw, and I'm going to go ahead and just show you how I drew that. So if you want to grab your pencil and an eraser, we'll do some freehanding today. It's always nice to have a tracer if you aren't super confident with your freehanding skills, but if you want to do that, you can always find a picture online and use some graphite paper and trace it onto your page. But this is a real simple one, so I thought I'll just show you guys how I'm going to draw this out today. So I'm going to start with the little windmill area, and it's going to be kind of a column shape, and I'm just going to do two little lines going down this way to draw that in. And then we're going to top it off with a little curved line. And these Dutch windmills, including the one that's kind of built onto the front of this inn, has a curved top, kind of like this. So I just drew that top curved like that. And tell me if you guys can see that. Leslie Ann says, good picture, a little grainy, but the art side is clear. Okay, great. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Alrighty. So, and unfortunately, I can't make the picture any bigger today, but yeah, this is pretty good lighting, so hopefully you guys can see. Hi, Lillian. I'm so glad you're on. Thanks for watching today. Okay, so we're going to draw, like I said, we're going to draw this freehand, and go ahead and do the little dome, and we'll do a little extra piece of detail, I guess, underneath like that. And tell me if that's dark enough for y'all. I know sometimes the lighting is a little bit bright, so tell me if you guys can see all that. And now we're just going to draw some little detail on this building. So a couple more lines coming down the front like this. And then we're going to do a little window right here, and we'll put the little awning on the top of the window first. You guys want me to come a little closer? Maybe coming a little closer might help. Just a little bit. And maybe a little bit down. I'm not in my normal setup, so it's a little different than I'm used to. Okay, how's that? Okay, so we're starting with the windmill part of the building. You know, that iconic Dutch windmill is what we're going for. Okay, and so draw your little sides of your building. This is really flexible. You could make this different if you wanted to. I'm going to do a little awning off the top of a window and then a little window coming down here. So just a couple of kind of rectangular shapes. And now I'm going to put a little flower box on the bottom. You know, you always see the little flower boxes on Dutch pictures and things. So we're going to draw a little rectangle kind of at the bottom of this here. And proportions are probably off, but I'm just kind of drawing it in. Hey, Bonnie, so glad to see you on. And so those of you that are new to watching or even the ones who are watching all the time, go ahead and pop in the comments where you're watching from so that all the other people watching can see. I know we have some people from a lot of different areas, so go ahead and put that on. So do your little box there, and we'll add flowers to this, but we won't need to do that right now. Next, I put a ruler on your supply list. So I'm going to use this ruler to do the little windmill area. Bonnie's in South Florida. Yay! There's not a lot of Dutch influence in South Florida, I'm guessing. Mostly Spanish, maybe. And then just modern, probably. Okay, so it's going to be like one big X, and you can make it off if you want to, but I'm just going to center it up on the building, and I'm going to just eyeball how long I want it to be. A little lightly there, and then we'll make this one at a 45-degree angle. I'm sorry, 90-degree angle to that other line. So just, what is that called? Perpendicular? Yeah, I think so. Anyway, okay, so just do a little X across the top, and then you'll have these little flags coming down off of it that kind of start before the end of it, and they're just little rectangles that go like this. And I'm going to draw them over the top of the building, even though the building's behind this one, because that's the way it would look. We'll do this one here. Just try to eyeball it, make sure they're about the same size. It's okay if they're not perfect. This is just a real simple sketch, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And this probably is maybe a little too big. I can maybe make this one a little smaller. Bring it back toward the thing a little bit. So kind of, that's why you're using pencil, so you can kind of eyeball and see how big do I want my little things to be. Okay, so maybe about like that, maybe a little smaller. Let's see, I feel like the building that I drew in my preliminary sketch was a little bit bigger than this one. So I'm going to bring all these little flags in just a little bit closer. Yeah, that looks better. It looks a little bit more believable, huh? I'm just shortening these down a little bit like that. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, so just getting the basic idea down. And then I'm going to go ahead and, oh yeah, lots of Spanish, Bonnie says. Okay, Lillian's in Prineville. Great. Okay, so now we're going to do the little building that comes off of this. I thought it would be cool to do the little building. So I'm just going to draw basically a rectangle shape coming. You start just a little bit down from this dome, so it's not quite as tall. Actually, I'm going to go even further down. Down, maybe about like this from the dome. Give it a little bit of roof there. And then we'll also draw the bottom. It's going to be up from the bottom of this little windmill building. So it looks like it's set back a little bit. And then we're going to do a little pointed roof, just a nice pointy Dutch looking roof like this. And they kind of curve, you know, so they have that real slanty, old timey looking shape. And then two lines coming down to give it a little building coming out. And to make this building look like it's coming out further, you want it to come further than this line here. Okay, something like that. And I'm going to draw a little window at the top here and then give it a little Tudor detail. So we're going to do a little T shape here and a little X in between. And it's good to look at some reference photos for Tudor style buildings or Dutch style buildings, because you don't want it to look like a barn. You know, barns have all those X's and stuff. But what I found is if you go like have 3 lines coming down this way, and then you give it this little extra line down here at the bottom. These lines at the top can just be 1 across the whole thing. So 1, 1, 1. And then these lines down at the bottom are X's. And that seemed to work. Okay, so just kind of add those lines in, and that'll give your building some detail. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is actually, our theme for this month has been sunflowers, so I really want to have sunflowers in this painting. Actually, I might be a little bigger now that I think of it. Let me try this. There we go. All right, so hopefully that gives you guys a little bit more room. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the sunflowers first, so that it doesn't, so we still have room for them and they're not like gone before we start painting them. And so because I want them to kind of frame out this building. So the way I'm going to do those, I'm going to kind of erase a little bit of the corner of this. I want my sunflowers to come up around the left-hand side. And I know I want at least one big one, maybe like here. I'm going to just draw the center of the sunflower. And then I'll probably have another one over here, but I'm not going to draw the center yet. I'll see where this one lands. Okay, now I'm going to get my paints out. But before I do that, I just realized I put my Bible in my lap so I wouldn't forget to read my Bible verse. And I didn't start with my Bible verse. So I'm going to move my Bible after I read my Bible verse out of my lap, because that's always the best place to start, right? So today I'm just going to read from Mark chapter 12. And I want to read a couple of verses because it takes a little bit of setup. But this is very well known passage, I'm sure, to most of you. So this is a great scripture to keep in mind this morning. Here it is. I'll start in verse 28 and end in verse 31, where it's all highlighted pink right there. And one of the scribes came, and having heard them reasoning together and perceiving that he had answered them well, asked him, "Which is the first commandment of all?" And Jesus answered him, "The first of all the commandments is, 'Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind and with all thy strength.' This is the first commandment. And the second is like, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these." And I love that they asked for the first commandment, like the number one commandment, and he gave them two. It was like, not only do you need to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, but you also need to love your neighbor as yourself. I just think that's really, really great. One of the things I love about the heart, soul, mind, and strength is it doesn't leave anything out. So some people say, "Oh, I've got too much outward expression of my faith and not enough inward," or some people, "I have too much inward expression of my faith and not enough outward." Well, that one basically says your entire mind, heart, soul, mind, strength. That's all your emotions, everything that you do, everything you say, everything you think, everything totally submitted to God's will. So I love that verse. Alrighty, so hopefully that gets you started on the right foot, like you should always be, with some scripture every day. And I'm going to get my watercolors out. This is my Como Revi Mozart watercolor set. Those of you that don't know which one I use, here's what it looks like. And I'm going to go ahead and try to tell you what colors I'm using as I go. But we're going to start with this sunflower. Really wanted to start with the sunflower so that we can get that painted in first. So I'm going to use some of the number 52 brown. And I have a little palette over here that I like to mix my colors on. So I'll kind of show you how that's looking. But I'm going to water that color down quite a bit and just I'm going to keep my painting real simple today because I don't want it to take too long. When you're doing art journaling, sometimes it's tempting to do really complicated stuff, but it's important to remember you're doing a little bit of art every day. And you don't want to overwhelm yourself with something that's crazy complicated. You can take the time to do that, especially if it brings you joy and you enjoy it. But definitely be careful not to overwhelm yourself. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit of yellow. This is number 3 brilliant yellow here, and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of number 10 orange so it warms it up. I always have trouble with yellows that are too cool. I like them to be warmer, sunnier yellows. I'm watering it down a little bit, and I'm going to draw some petals onto this sunflower that are basically going to be the petals in the front of the flower. So we're going to start I'm going to move this so I can move my journal around as we go. And I actually like to pull petals towards me, not push away from me. It's better on my hands and I have more control. So I like to pull down and pull the petals towards me. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to paint them in real lightly. And you can practice this kind of football shape on your petals. The more you do it, the better you get. But what I'm drawing right now are the petals that are in the front. If you'll notice, if you look at a picture of a sunflower, it has all these petals in the front layer, and then there's like a second layer and even a third layer usually. And sometimes they're varying shades of yellow or orange. And so this is that first layer that I'm painting in right now. And I'm starting with a real light yellow so I can just get the basic idea down. And then we'll paint in the next layer. And you'll notice I'm not even painting all the way out to the end. I'm just doing some real light suggestions of petals. And I'm putting a couple together, and then some that are individually separate, leaving some space in between. Okay, now we're going to put another layer of that yellow, and I'm going to go just a little bit darker with it and start on the ones that have already dried a little. And this is where you start to layer your watercolors. Just do some layers like that. And you can add this layer and not pull it all the way up over the color that you already have. So leave some of that lighter yellow showing. So basically don't pull it up as far as you're pulling that petal out. You notice I'm kind of doing curves toward the outside of the petal and a little bit in the center and leaving a lot of white space. I like to leave a lot of white space on my petals. It makes them light and kind of breathable. Hi, Jackie. Glad to see you on. Welcome. This is very similar to the flower the type of flower I drew for my Wednesday challenge. I ended up not using my tracer for my Wednesday challenge, and I did a petal freehand instead. So I kind of used this technique while I was doing that. Okay, going all the way around with this yellow and kind of adding layers. I'm trying not to get too dark though. This one's a little darker than I wanted it. So I'm just kind of drawing off my brush as I go to keep that as light as I can. Okay, so now that that front layer is done, I'm going to put a few petals in the background using that lightest yellow again. We're just going to fill this in. Anywhere there's space, I'm going to add some yellow. And this is the lighter yellow. We're going to add in these little petals behind. And I'm still leaving white space. As much as I would love to draw it all the way out to the tip, I don't want to fill in everything because then it won't have that nice, light, flowery look like we want. We want it to look like they're being kind of highlighted by the sunshine. By the way, it's super sunny here today. I was really surprised. We basically packed for really cool weather, mostly not because we were expecting it to be bad weather, but just because we've gotten so used to the warm weather we've been having in Eugene. And so I figured I'm going to freeze when I get because it's so warm. But it's actually pretty warm today, so I was pleasantly surprised. Okay, so now you can see I filled in all those petals in the back, and I'm just going to take a little bit of the same lighter yellow, and with this second layer, because I'm layering, even though they're the same shade, the layers are going to cause the second layer to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of darker shades of yellow over top of the ones in the background that I just did. And I can kind of put those just kind of in the center of the petals, closer to the center of the flower, like this. Are you guys following along? Give me a flower in the comments if you're following along. And then let's see, what did we do last time? Oh, give me some eyeballs in the comments if you're just watching. You guys found some cute emojis last time for that. So let me know if you're just watching or if you're actually following along. It's always fun to see who's actually creating with me. And I love to be in the Art Worthy Journal Club because we have live events on Zoom. So then I can actually see your faces. But the closest thing I can get is a comment that tells me whether or not you're watching or painting or following along or what you're doing. So tell me in the comments. And I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more of this orange to each of the petals, and that'll about do it for that flower. And that'll kind of frame in the left-hand side of this little painting. And I'm going to add another layer of brown to the center to give this sunflower a little bit more shading there. But it doesn't need a whole lot because I really don't want this page to get too dark. So that's what I want to do. Oh, Leslie Ann is following along. Yay, Jackie's following along. That's awesome. I'm so glad. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and paint in the building. And if I want to add some more flowers, I'll add those in after we get the building a little bit more painted in. So I'm going to go ahead and look at a picture of our building because I actually have some reference photos. And if you want to, you can look at reference photos for this, but I'm going to use a light tan for the white. So I know that the building is actually white, but a light tan is going to make it come off the page a little bit more. And once we get everything else painted, it won't matter that it's a color. So I'm going to use just a real light tan. And to do that, I used the number 52 brown, watered down a lot. And I'm just going to paint in everything that's the white part of this building. And that includes this front little round building here, and then all of the rest of the building that isn't roof, basically everything else. And then when I come over here near this flower, I'm just going to not worry about painting where the petal overlaps the building. I'm just going to let that petal be front and center there. Okay, and then for the top of the building, there's sort of this gray-green color, so I'm going to use olive green and mix it with a little bit of black. So I have regular black, number 62. I think it's called deep black. So just kind of a muddy green color. The olive green has that muddy texture to it anyway. Let me see if I can see comments coming through. Okay. So we're going to do the top of this dome in that greenish color. And when I'm painting it in, I'm leaving a little bit of white highlights. So I'm not worried about painting the whole thing in. And then the next little section, I'm going to leave that little part right there. I'm going to leave. Okay, and the windmill itself is actually red. So I'm going to wait until the last step to paint that in because it's going to be so bright, and red is such a vivid color that if I paint it now and then I accidentally bump it, it could bleed out into the rest of the color. So I'm not going to paint the windmill itself yet. So I'm going to paint the all the details of the building. And so that's going to take the 52 brown and black. I'm going to take the brown, put it on my palette. I'm going to get a lot of it. Or whatever palette you're using, just grab the darkest brown you have. I'm going to add black to mine to make it even darker. And I'm using a water brush. I forgot to mention what brush I'm using, but I'm about to switch brushes. I'm using a water brush that I got at Hobby Lobby in a set. I think this one came in a set. This is Arteza. And then I'm going to switch to these pink, whoops, I think I have a smaller one, water brushes. I like to have these on trips because they are so portable, easy to clean up, and you don't need to have a cup of water. When you're traveling, it's really kind of precarious to have a bottle of water because you can spill it, or it's hard to store. It's hard to make sure it's not going to tip over. So it's really nice to have a water brush instead. And the water brush holds the water in the body of the pen right here. So that's really, really nice. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit of this brown, and I'm just going to use this brush to draw all the details. So a lot of people have a hard time going dark with their watercolors, but in this case, you definitely want to use the darker color because that's going to make the detail of the painting stand out. We'll probably add a little bit more detail here, but I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible since we are just doing an art journal for today. Okay, and then I'm going to do this roof line. I'm going to actually let it come across and then all the way across this roof line here. And then we're going to fill that all in. And when you're painting in a little sketch like this, you can leave some white space to, oh, was I frozen? Oh, okay, I'm glad I'm not frozen anymore. Okay, you can leave a little white space to make things look highlighted. And that, if you're not sure where to put the highlights, just basically don't color it in all the way. You know, whenever you were in school, they're like, color it in all the way. In this case, don't color it in all the way, and that will actually make it look better if it's not colored in all the way. Okay, we're also going to do this little roof here. And when I paint my roof in, I'm leaving a little gap between the pointy roof here and the roof on that other part of the building there. That little space in between is going to let my eye see that other part of the building. And then we're going to draw the little walls here. Again, we can leave some space between the roof and these little walls. And then you can do your little window like that. And as we get closer to this flower, I'm not going to worry about all the lines being perfect because I do want to let the flower stand out more than anything. So kind of letting that fade out into the flower. And then we're going to do these columns here. Do the foundation line right there. And then all of these in between. And I'm not letting these all connect. They don't have to all connect. You can just let them come close, but they don't have to perfectly line up. All of them like that. And then this little window. We want to make sure we get this window and our little window box and this little roof that came over the top of the window there. Okay, so that gives us most of the shape of that. You can kind of see it coming together. We're going to need to add a little bit more shading to it, but we're almost there. I want to let that brown start to dry a little bit. So while it's drying, I'm going to paint another little flower in to kind of frame out this side of the painting. And to do that, I'm going to do a little circle here. Just a little, I'm going to do a tiny one because I think it needs a little bit to balance it out there. And maybe add a little bit more brown to it. And we're going to switch colors we're working with. I'm going to do a orangey colored flower. So I'm going to add orange to my palette here and a little bit, let that mix in with the yellow. The orange I'm using is still number 10 orange mixed with brilliant yellow. And we're going to do the same thing we did with the bigger flower, only a little quicker, a little smaller. And that is we're just going to do the front petals first. And one thing you can just be okay with is when these flowers start to touch each other, just let them overlap. That'll make it look natural and pretty. Be careful as you're painting close to your building that you don't let the brown blend into your flower petal. Be careful that you don't reactivate the brown, that dark brown that's on the edges of the building. That could accidentally smear. You don't want to smear your flower. And I'm going a little quicker with this flower, as you can tell, because I just want it to be a small, simple little flower like that. Okay, and I'm using my smaller brush still because this flower needs a little bit more help being detailed. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of red. I mean, I'm just barely, you'll see my palette over here, I'm just barely touching this red. That's my crimson. I'm going to add it into the orange that I'm already using. And that's what I'm going to use to go back over top of these petals to make the front petals stick out a little bit more. And I'm basically just starting with the outside of the petal and then doing the bottom half like that. I'm going to spin this around again. Outside of the petal, do the bottom half like that, the outside. And that's just going to give the petals a little bit more color. Now I can clean my brush off again, and then I'm going to use that lighter orange that I started with and do all the petals in the background in that color. That just makes the petals in the front stand out a little more than the petals in the back. And this can be real simple. It doesn't have to be fancy. Okay, so something like that. Okay, and you can kind of play with it and see where you like them to be placed or whatever. And then I'm going to put one more flower up here to kind of balance out the whole painting. So we're going to start with the center of the flower again, or maybe I want it down here. I'm not sure. Actually, I think I'm going to put it down here. This will fill in this space over here a little bit more. So I'm using that brown again. That was a little darker than I wanted it to be, so I'm going to lighten it up. Do a little circle like this. And notice I'm just barely drawing this circle in. I'm not really making it a perfect circle. And this sunflower is going to be like a red burgundy color. Our neighbor has some beautiful sunflowers and she keeps taking pictures of them, and I keep loving the colors of them. So I'm really enjoying drawing these darker sunflowers. And then in our Artworthy Journal Club, several of the ladies painted some red sunflowers. So I'm excited to see those showing up, but they make such beautiful, beautiful flowers. Okay, so drawing those front petals again, and I'm going to take a little bit more time with this one because it is such a dark color. I'm going to be careful to paint these little petals nice. And you'll notice as I'm coming up to the top, I'm not even drawing the end of the flower, just kind of suggesting where it might be, but not even drawing it. I'm going to draw the next petal next to it. And then a little shading toward the center of the flower. And I also am letting my brush come into the brown and even pick up some of the brown as I pull out from the center of the flower. That allows the watercolors to blend together and basically do what watercolors do best, which is blend and flow together. And that always looks really nice. Okay, go around this way, spin it around again. Now this time I'm not pulling towards myself, I'm pushing away from myself. I'm not sure why I switched, but just do whatever is good for your hands when you're painting. If you find that your hand is cramped or uncomfortable, switch your hand position because your brush strokes will be smoother and your painting will be nicer if your hand is comfortable. Okay, so just kind of filling in those front petals again, like we said before. And I'm going to add a little bit more red to my palette over here. I'm using the Crimson number 17 red and a little bit of number 18 Carmine, just getting it dark. And I'm adding a little bit of brown, just bringing it to a nice burgundy color. I can even add a tiny bit of black if I need to, but that brings it to a nice burgundy color. And I'm going to use that as a layer over top of these petals once again. And this one won't need very many layers because it is such a rich color, and I don't want to overpower the rest of the painting. Okay, and I'm not bringing this red all the way out to the tip of these petals because it doesn't need it. Just kind of the center of the flower here. And then spinning this around so I can get the bottom of that. And you can see I'm taking just a little bit more time because with a dark color, obviously you don't want to overpower anything. So just take your time and be aware of where your hand is going. But in general, the watercolors are pretty forgiving, so don't stress about it. Okay, so I'm going to water my brush down again, and now I'm going to do these background petals. And these ones, again, are going to be lighter. I'm not going to be so worried about them having such a perfect shape. They're going to be just kind of in the background hanging out. And I can fill in the ones that are kind of off the page here. And then fill in these ones in between each of these. Thanks, Dad. He says, very pretty. Okay. And now we're just going to fill in a little bit of shading on the bottom half of those petals. And that will kind of finish up that flower. I'm going to come back and add a little bit more brown to each of these, but I want them to dry first. And the reason you let them dry, I'm going to add a little bit of shading on the center of these is what I'm talking about. The reason I want them to dry before I add the dark is because if I add dark brown to these while they're wet, which these ones aren't, but this one could be a little bit wet, is because it will just blend into what's there and create a big puddle. And I don't want that. I actually want crisp lines on top. So I'm not wanting wet on wet, which is a technique I talk about a lot. Okay, we're going to do a little bit more brown on the building because that white is there, but I really want some shading on the building. It's looking a little too much contrast. So I'm going to grab the same brown I was using earlier for actually kind of what I used on the roof here, adding a little bit more brown to it. Just kind of grab whatever brown is close to what you were using before, and I'm going to add some shading on the left side of this building, and leaving a little white there. I forgot to paint in this little box. I guess I can paint that in too. And then a little bit on the left side of there. And then I'm going to also put some shading on the back side here under this roof, and especially on this left side. And normally I wouldn't want to paint over the top of all these brown lines because they are going to blend a little. But because they're brown and the background is tan, even if they do bleed a little bit, it's not going to hurt my painting too much. If you do have some watercolors that like to bleed a lot, you could do that layer first. Do all this shading first before you do anything else. And then I'm kind of putting some shading on the right-hand side of any of the little brown lines. So just kind of adding a little shading here. And I'm going to darken that color up again and bring even more in. So I'm going to go even darker, closer to the building. Just going a little bit darker, adding even more shading. And I'm not being real particular. Like I said, the watercolors are pretty forgiving. They tend to look nice either way. Okay, so that just gave it a little bit more character. I need a little shading on this dome now that I've added some shading everywhere else. I'm going to add a little bit more shading there. Bring that across and let that dry. And while that's drying, I'm going to add more brown to these flowers. Same brown we were using for the house, actually, adding a little bit more water to it. And because the house is so dark, I really want these flowers to not be washed out. So I'm going to add a little bit there. And a little bit here. And I'm using real short, quick, light brush strokes so that it just kind of barely touches the page as I'm coming around. And that makes those a little bit brighter, a little bit richer in color. And let's see how dry that is. Okay, that's about ready for me to come in. So I'm going to grab a brighter red and mix it into the red we were just using for this flower down here. I want this red and this burgundy to kind of be comparable, so I'm going to stray from what it actually looks like in person a little bit just to make this painting all come together. So this is going to end up being more burgundy than the actual building is. But I'm going to go ahead and paint this in with almost a burgundy red color. Like that. My line is wobbly. It's not perfectly straight. It's still going to be fine. Do that X like that. And then these little things are actually, they're kind of see-through. They have this like checkerboard pattern on it. So I'm going to draw the outside of them first with my my water brush, and then do the little lines going this way. And they don't even have to all line up perfectly and touch. Like, I'm leaving little gaps. So I'm not coloring it in perfectly, and I'm not drawing it all in perfectly, and that'll actually help it look more reasonable. Because especially from a distance, your eye isn't going to see every little line. And it'll keep our painting looking nice and airy and open. I'm even going to add some that aren't perfect in there. Okay. This one too. Can draw that in like that. And see, I'm not even closing off the ends of the rectangle as I paint it in. Then I can just kind of draw two little lines across there and draw these lines this way. Also, it creates the illusion of movement too, as if it is turning potentially in the wind. Okay, we're going to do these little lines and then two lines going this way. And that's about all I have for today. So there's our little painting, this little Dutch looking house thing. And some sunflowers, which I'm loving to be able to use these sunflowers in so many different ways for this month's theme. So I hope you've been enjoying seeing that. And if you have, feel free to share it with someone else that you think might enjoy it. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of the journaling on my page and take a picture and post that. But thank you all so much for joining me. This has been really, really fun. And if you'd like to try out a little bit more art journaling, you have the opportunity to do so starting on Monday, but you need to sign up today because we're running out of time. So if you would like to sign up for the Get Started Art Journaling Workshop, it's a free 3-day workshop. It's totally on your time schedule. If you have a schedule and you're not sure you can make it, you are welcome to do it on your own time because they're pre-recorded video workshops. Now there will be live events, one live event every day of that 3 days, but there are optional bonus live events where we get to talk face-to-face, which I'm really looking forward to. But those are optional. So if you are someone who works a lot or you aren't sure you're going to be able to show up, it's on your time schedule, so I hope you will go ahead and join us. And the way that you do that is you can click the link in the description of my last post, and I'll put another post very soon so that you can sign up for that. So just watch for that. That'll be coming in the next couple of minutes. And I hope to see you there. Please sign up, and we will be really looking forward to seeing all of you because you'll get to work with art journalers who've been journaling, people who've never done it before, and you can get all those questions answered. It's going to be a really fun workshop. Alrighty, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys there. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you hopefully Monday, and if not next week for another live demo from start to finish right here on Artworthy Life. Take care. God bless you guys. Bye.